This talk was given by Roshi Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
Today is Saturday, November 16th, 2024. And today I'd like to look at a koan in relation to something that is, well, kind of in our lives at the moment, I think. So the issue that's I'd like to take a look at is that of failure. Sometimes great epics begin with failure. We'll look, you'll see what the koan is in a moment, but I'm going to start with the opening lines of the lines really 1 through 10 or so of the Odyssey, which is the Fitzgerald translation. It goes like this. Remember, the whole Odyssey begins with this, the great journey to come back, Odysseus' journey to come back to his true home, to overcome all obstacles, to return to his true home, all temptations too, to return to his true home. That's the Odyssey. Begin, sing in me, muse, and through me tell the story of that man, skilled in all ways of contending, the wanderer, harried for years on end after he plundered the stronghold on the proud height of Troy. He saw the townlands and learned the minds of many distant men and weathered many bitter nights and days in his deep heart at sea, while he fought only to save his life, to bring his shipmates home. But not by will nor valor could he save them, for their own recklessness destroyed them all, children and fools. They killed and feasted on the cattle of Lord Helios the sun, and he who moves all day through heaven took from their eyes the dawn of their return. Of these adventures, Muse, daughter of Zeus, tell us in our time. Lift the great song again. So the entire Odyssey begins with the failure of Odysseus to save the men he set out to bring home. He couldn't do it. So we'll look at today Manjusri, the great Bodhisattva of Wisdom, fails. The case is 42 in the Gateless Barrier. A woman comes out of meditation. It goes like this. Once Manjusri went to a place where many Buddhas had assembled with the world-honored one. When he arrived, all the Buddhas had returned to their original dwelling place. Only a young woman remained seated in samadhi near the Buddha's seat. Manjusri addressed the Buddha and asked, "How can the young woman get near the Buddha's seat when I cannot?" The Buddha replied to Manjusri, "Awaken this young woman from her samadhi and ask her yourself." Manjusri walked around the young woman 3 times, snapped his fingers once, took her to the Brahma heaven, and exerted all his supernatural powers, but he could not bring her out. The world-honored one said, "Even 100,000 Manjusris cannot awaken her." Down below, past 1,200 million lands, as innumerable as the sands of the Ganges, lives the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom in the early stages of practice. He will be able to bring her out of her samadhi. Instantly, the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom emerged from the earth and made bows before the world-honored one who gave his imperial order. Delusive wisdom stepped before the young woman, snapped his fingers once, and at this she came out of her samadhi. Woman's commentary. The comedy old Shakya puts on the stage here is a great hodgepodge. Just tell me now. Manjusri is the teacher of the 7 Buddhas. Why couldn't he get the young woman out of her samadhi when the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom, a beginner, could? If you can firmly grasp this point, then for you, This busy life of ignorance and discrimination will be the life of the dragon samadhi. Woman's verse: one can awaken her, the other cannot. Both of them are free, a god mask, a devil mask. The failure is wonderful indeed. The failure is wonderful indeed. So, the name Bodhisattva of Delusive Wisdom is Robert Aiken Roshi's translations. Other English versions simply name him Momyo. But Aiken Roshi has kindly sharpened the case for us by making it quite clear. This is the Bodhisattva of Delusive Wisdom. So what is the gathering about that Manjusri goes to? Most likely, Buddhists have come from across the universe to brainstorm their essential task, which is how to liberate all sentient beings, all suffering. So they've come to talk shop. This story of their meeting and of Manjusri's late arrival actually appears in a sutra titled The Collective Essential of All Buddhas. And the Buddha gathering there is revealed to have taken place, get this, in a distant galaxy named the Buddha land of Tenno Tathagata. So here that vast cosmic event simply forms the backdrop to the koan proper. Sutras say that our universe is filled with innumerable worlds. And even in this, in the case itself, it talks about down below past 1,200 million lands, as innumerable as the sands of the Ganges, lives the Bodhisattva of Delusive Wisdom. This is almost a reference to the number of galaxies, the number of stars in the sky. It's a vast cosmic scenario. Countless stars in our galaxy, countless galaxies, countless, all falling like snowflakes through an endless night. So that's the stage that's set here. Now, the sutras also say that incomprehensible periods of time have already passed between the arising of Buddha after Buddha right here on earth, where, if you know, we do the ancestral line whenever we recite that. You'll see there are 7 fully awakened Buddhas, Shakyamuni Buddha being the 7th on planet Earth is Buddhist cosmology. By the way, I'm reading from a book of mine, the most recent book, a Zen Life of Bodhisattvas. And this is chapter, I should have mentioned that. This is the 4th chapter, Manjusri's failure. So the koan makes use of the larger epic story to challenge us to actually awaken ourselves and realize Manjusri's intimately non-dual selfless wisdom. And through the intricacies of the koan, come to understand the fundamental nature of our own lives and reality. Though it's a play, as Wu Men, compiler of the Gateless Barrier, takes pains to point out, it's not the kind of performance we can simply sit back and enjoy staying in our seats. Its truth won't open to us passively. We can't applaud at the end and leave the theater. Instead, we ourselves have to get up on the stage and join in the drama. That's the challenge of koan practice. Each of us has to join in intimately and bring the play alive and be part of it. The koan is as participatory as the living theater of the 1960s. The audience was involved. Nobody was outside the frame, so to speak. There's no observers. Everyone's a participant. A life, of course, our own life is performative. Our own life is an active, engaged performance, a presentation. Flowers present, stars present, animals present, oceans and streams present, human beings present. When we're really with it, our life is a wonderful, selfless, giving performance. Well, it's alive. Koans touch on this. So What a show it is in the case. The curtain rises as Manjusri is being admitted to the gathering, only to discover that all the Buddhas have returned to their original dwelling place. Why? Where's the original dwelling place? And an interesting side note, perhaps, is I make a note here that women, and indeed throughout the Gateless Barrier, I'm going to use a quote from The Guardian on Bob Dylan. It kind of really reminds me of Bob Dylan. And in fact, Bob Dylan seems to take note of that in some of his lyrics, as I'll point to, just as a side note. So this is from The Guardian in 2021, which was an article Bob Dylan at 80 in praise of a mighty and unbowed singer-songwriter. 2021, so I guess Bob Dylan's 83 now. In any case, we are celebrating an artist who can transform his personal experience into something mythic, and then back again into something that is personally meaningful to his listener. And then the Guardian article continues to say, this double operation is at the heart of his genius. Wu Men is very much like this. And the connection may not be so far-fetched. And perhaps it's one that Dylan himself recognizes on his recent album. Well, recent is a couple of years ago anyway. The most recent is next to most recent. There was something about dream something that came after. In any case, Rough and Rowdy Ways has lines like, I, like a shooting star, and also a line, climbed a mountain of swords and bare feet. Now, these are lines that are lifted directly from the Gateless Barrier. So it sounds like Dylan's been reading the Gateless Barrier. You have commentary to Case 8, Sishung's Carts, which goes, if you realize this directly, your I is like a shooting star, and your activity like a flash of lightning. And his verse to Case 17, the national teacher calls 3 times, concludes, if you want to support the gate and sustain the house, you must climb a mountain of swords with bare feet. So those 2 lines from Dylan's fairly recent album are both lifted directly from the Gateless Barrier. So Wu Men might have been the Dylan of his time. And Dylan, maybe, at least linguistically, the Wu Men of ours. Speculation aside, Manjusri goes to a gathering of many Buddhas only to find they've all returned to their original place. Aiken Roshi, in his commentary on the case, says the rest of the case will be in the bag for you if you get why and wherefore of this, the why and wherefore. How come when Manjusri appears, all the Buddhas have already returned to their original place? In short, Wu Men is telling us that the mythic, or Aiken Roshi is telling us that the mythic will have become intimate for you if you get what's going on. Except, not all the Buddhas are gone. Shakyamuni Buddha, the Buddha of our historic time period, remains seated there, and oddly, seated very close to him is a young woman deep in samadhi, out beyond her ordinary daily consciousness and seemingly rather stuck there. Stuck in this empty, wow, I finally got here kind of condition. Why can a young woman sit near the Buddha when Manjusri, the Buddha's own teacher, the Bodhisattva of Wisdom, can't? Shouldn't the Bodhisattva of perfect wisdom be closer to the Buddha than anyone? Yet here he is, distant from the Buddha, while a young woman, a beginner no less, sits close to him. Now, to be honest, this part of the case makes use of, it draws on, a dark aspect of both Asian history and the world's history, and a dark aspect that, sadly and horribly, is trying to be revived in our own culture and time today. So let's take a look. Classical Asian Buddhism, essentially monastic in form, paid little attention to women's abilities and achievements. Though wise women appear in sutras and koans, rarely do we meet them as Dharma ancestors, fully acknowledged as enlightened teachers. Fortunately, at least in Zen tradition, this is changing. Contemporary research is reclaiming both the realized, ordained, and lay women, and laymen too, who were always there, kind of hidden in the shadows of monastic patriarchy. So a misogynist history lies behind this koan point, and it's not simply that an ordinary person is near the Buddha, while a great bodhisattva like Manjusri isn't. It's that a young woman is there, doing rather well, too, her very youth emphasizing her unworthiness. Remember, in ancient China, the elderly received deep respect, not so much the young. As a woman, too, she carries the stains of menstruation, pregnancy, and projected male desire, all of which would have made this case something of a mind bender at the time. What? A young woman is close to the Buddha? Impossible! Now, this is disturbingly similar to the hook in the classic koan of Zhao Chu's dog, the first koan in Gateless Barrier. Asked by a monk if even something as lowly as a dog has Buddha nature, Master Zhao Chu answered Mu, a response that has benefited countless Zen practitioners for the last 1,000 years. Our koan of Manjusri and the young woman asks, can even someone as lowly as a young woman have spiritual potential? Now remember, this is being used by women in the koan not to uphold misogyny, but to empower the drama. Think of an actor not speaking, but screaming their lines. It's there for emphasis, to make a point, but it is there. Wu Men, compiler of the Gateless Barrier, used what his culture offered to dramatize this point. Now, he might also have had something up his sleeve. In both the Lotus Sutra and the Vimalakirti Sutra, a Naga princess, in the former, and a youthful goddess, in the latter, put monks and arhats alike to shame with their wisdom. So perhaps Wu Men is giving a nod to a deeper truth that practice realization is open to all, wisdom accessible to everyone. If so, bravo. Now, about the young woman's condition. The word samadhi is from the Sanskrit root samada, meaning to collect or bring together, and is typically translated as concentration or unification of mind. In short, it is a condition of the mind absorbed in its own presence, in silent, one-pointed, attention-less attention, a selfless but not necessarily awakened condition. It can be pleasurable, even blissful. However, if we become attached to this condition as more real than our ordinary experience, we can create yet another obstacle. Daily life haunted by memories of this something more special can now seem not good enough, which might be okay as motivation to mature further, knowing that deeper living is possible. But if we cling to blissful states and our memories of them, we can get stuck. Some people experiencing a degree of peace through breath practice can then hesitate to take on the challenge of koan practice, fearing it will threaten their happy enough condition. If our aspiration is awakening, then faith is important. But faith in what? Faith in our own nature and in our own potential to awake to it. Roshi Capital used to say that Zen requires only one fundamental article of faith, faith that the Buddha was neither a fool nor a liar, when upon his great enlightenment, to his own astonishment, he exclaimed, "Wonder of wonders! All beings are Buddhas, fully endowed with wisdom and virtue. Only their unconscious habit of self-centered thinking prevents them from realizing it." At some point, this faith leads us to think, if the Buddha wasn't a fool or a liar, then what did he mean? All beings must mean me. But how can I be a Buddha, filled as I am with confusion, anxiety, anger, jealousy, pettiness? And if we're all Buddhas, why all this suffering? Why all this injustice and hatred? Why dictatorships? Why stupid wars? What's going on? What's at the root of it all? Probing into such questions is the path of practice realization, which might begin years before we ever choose to cross our legs or enter a Zendo. Faith and doubt, which does not mean simple skepticism, are not really so different. Doubt is faith in action. Faith is the foundation of doubt. The doubt that Zen speaks of means openness, wonder, a creative willingness to look directly, not simply accept prepackaged answers. It frees us to deeply ask, why is the world so filled with injustice and difficulty? It frees us to really ask, why am I here? Who am I? Why was I born? Why must I die? Where are we going? It is a way of removing blinders and reclaiming our innate freedom. While calm and steadiness are deeply valuable, they are not in themselves insight, which is the point of the koan, really of every koan. Insight. A koan is not just a pointer toward further practice or towards more subtle concepts. Each one is a doorway into realization right now. Why can't the most deeply insightful bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva of Wisdom himself, get close to the Buddha while someone new, here's our doubt, who's not even considered to have much potential, someone rather stuck too, in an early phase of practice, sits close by him? The koan's initial challenge was, where did the Buddhas go and why? The second is, why can't Manjusri get close to the Buddha while a young woman can? It seems rather ridiculous. Here's our doubt. That's something substantial to hold on to. Why? 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 Why are things the way they are? Why does it make no sense? This really bugs Manjusri. So he asks the Buddha, what's going on? Seems natural enough. Aren't we all asking? What's going on? Why are things such a mess? It makes no sense at all. The Buddha answers, awaken her and find out yourself. So Manjusri snaps his fingers beside her ear, circumambulates around her, even takes her up to the highest Brahma heavens, where the heavenly splendors might bring her around, or the terror of peering down from such heights might shock her out of her stuckness. Nothing works. Manjusri, the great Bodhisattva, teacher of the past 7 Buddhas, fails. Wisdom fails. Why? This question, too, demands our personal clarification. Not only can't Manjusri, the wisest of all the great Bodhisattva Mahasattvas, get close to the Buddha, but also he can't bring this young woman, a beginner, out of a limited samadhi. What gives? Don't you want to know? Doesn't it bug you? Doesn't this doubt grip you? What's going on? What gives? What is the function of wisdom? What is Manjusri's purpose? Why can't he enter the assembly of Buddhas? Why, of all the Buddhas, return to their original place? What is their original place? Why can't Manjusri get close to the Buddha? Well, a young woman can. And why can't he bring her out of her limited samadhi? And if all this wasn't enough, there remains a final humiliating twist. After Manjusri fails, a beginner bodhisattva, who we're told resides countless worlds, perhaps entire world systems or galaxies away, immediately appears and without hesitation easily awakens the young woman. Snap! Just like that, she emerges from her samadhi, which concludes the case. Wuman himself, compiler of the Gateless Barrier, calls this a total mishmash, a hodgepodge, and yet the play's the thing. Here again is Wumen's commentary. The comedy, get this, the comedy old Shakya puts on the stage here is a great hodgepodge. Just tell me now, Manjusri is the teacher of the 7 Buddhas. Why couldn't he get the young woman out of her samadhi when the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom, a beginner, could? If you can firmly grasp this point, then for you, this busy life, and certainly lay people know that truth, this busy life of ignorance and discrimination will be the life of the dragon samadhi. This busy life of ignorance and discrimination will be the life of the dragon samadhi. Now, why does Wumen call this a comedy? And what's the essence of the hodgepodge? The payoff he's telling us is that if you get clear on this, he says that for you, this ordinary life with its absurdities, its challenges, its injustices, its joys, sorrows, ups and downs, will be the dragon samadhi. That is, you won't simply gain a condition of calm or peace or bliss or realize some momentary experience of oneness. No. Instead, this very life, just as it is, will be transformed into liberation, realization, enlightenment. Like some great dragon, your insight will be so vast, it will swallow the universe in a single gulp. And just a note here, this doesn't mean you become complacent. Oh, things are fine just how they are, huh? No, that's not what it means. Now, hold on. Wait a minute. Not so fast. Our ordinary life, with its problems, messes, misunderstandings, disappointments, difficulties will be enlightenment? I mean, think about how you're feeling right now. This is enlightenment? That's what Wumen's saying? Our time-factored, limited life with its failed relationships, its missed opportunities, its anxieties, its terrible injustices, its angers, sorrows, and fleeting joys will be the great liberation? Really? Wumen doesn't simply say, have faith in this. He's saying, it's simply so. The carrot is that the dragon samadhi sounds like what we're looking for. The stick is that we might make an effort and fail. Roshi Kapleau used to offer these encouraging words. If you don't let the Dharma down, the Dharma will never let you down. That is, if you make every sincere effort that you can, at the very least, it'll be certainly better than making no effort at all. Not trying is a guarantee of nothing happening. But trying your best, he says, for the highest purposes, the Dharma will never let you down. Do your best. You might fail. The end of this koan is the failure is wonderful indeed. We'll get to that. In any case, nothing done sincerely, as Roshi Kapleau was saying, is a wasted effort. Nothing done sincerely. Even mistakes done sincerely. You thought it was the best thing at the time. All becomes part of your path. Is how you mature. Virtue is its own reward. But virtue doesn't mean goodness. That's one meaning of virtue. But the virtue of iron is strength. The virtue of ice is cold. The virtue of things, it's its nature. That's its virtue. Practice is its own reward, its own virtue, whether we deem it a success or not. There is virtue in making a sincere, wholehearted effort. That's the point. And I think making such wholehearted efforts in our time offers a degree of health, a degree of well-being in a bitter sea of self-centered evils that we're seeing arising around us. Making a sincere effort brings a degree of mental health when we're surrounded by such greed and ignorance, such self-centeredness. So woman's verse here is, one can awaken her, the other cannot. Both of them are free. A God mask, a devil mask. The failure is wonderful. Failure. Wonderful indeed. One can, one can't. Isn't that unfair? Shakespeare was an immediate success, but Melville never received a single positive review on his masterwork, Moby Dick. Picasso never failed to receive worshipful accolades, yet Van Gogh never sold a painting, and William Blake died in glorious poverty. One can awaken her, the other cannot. Astoundingly, Woman asserts that both are free. How is Manjusri free? And how is the Bodhisattva of Wisdom also free? How is Einstein free? And how is Walt Disney free? And what about us? How are we free? Dragon samadhi or no? Put on a God mask and people bow down in awe. Wear a devil mask and everyone runs off in terror. How often in the course of a single day might we put on one mask and take off another? Can failure be wonderful? Indeed. We dread failure, don't we? We want A's, not F's. In the movie The Right Stuff, when Alan Shepard, the first astronaut into space, is sealed into his tiny capsule perched at the top of a lethally explodable rocket, there at the knife edge of life and death, he utters a heartfelt prayer. "O Lord," he prays, "don't let me fuck up." He's not asking to survive. He's not asking to triumph. He's asking not to fail. Is Manjusri's failure wonderful indeed or sour grapes? A little note here. Some failures set the stage for great successes yet to come. I think of Winston Churchill, who spoke up in Parliament when the Nazi tide was rising. And what he said, he was such a great orator. What he said was, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. So, is Manjusri's failure wonderful indeed, or is it sour grapes? Is the koan saying that in the long run, painful experiences are for the best? If so, isn't that a dodge? And, oh well, good enough. Wouldn't that be to mistake a bell for a pot, as Wumen says in another context? Then again, a snake's inability to gallop, its failure to gallop, makes it a truly marvelous snake, not a failed horse. What if having no leg to stand on is our strength? To know such wonderful failure, we must awaken to Manjusri's nothing at all, the vast wisdom of just this, in which there is no me, no you, no self, no other, this total failure of all our egotistic stratagems, this failure of all our usual ploys and plots is called enlightenment. Enlightenment is the ego's greatest failure of all. Yet we also live within the wisdom of Momyo, the still wet behind the ears Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom. Snapping his fingers, Momyo instantly awakens the young woman, just like that. Quantum entanglement says that a single molecule or atom far off on the other side of the universe will rotate in unison with its twin on this side, no matter the incalculable distances between. The Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom and the young woman are an entangled pair. He snaps his fingers, and she comes out of her meditation. They get each other. They speak the same language. Why? How? And why is the great Bodhisattva of wisdom out in the cold? In an old Irish tale, the great warrior, poet, shaman, and king Fionn, spelled F-I-O-N-N, challenges his men with the question, what is the most beautiful music in the world? They each offer good answers, such as the call of the lark, the laughter of a child, the sigh of a woman, the baying of the hounds, the ringing of a sword against a shield in battle. Fionn rejects them all. Finally, when his men press him, he says that the most beautiful music in the world is the music of what happens, which turns the tale into an Irish koan, the music of what happens. And it is a tough koan, as we all know. So many awful, incomprehensible things happen. How can this be the most beautiful music? Quantum mechanics tends to agree with Fionn. The microsecond by microsecond unfolding of ordinary daily reality, the music of what happens, is the result of the failure of all other options. Lines of quantum possibility extending microsecond by microsecond in all directions collapse into the single line we rather naively and perhaps recklessly call reality. All other possible lines of existence are no-shows. are failures. The taste of the tea, this tea, the pink of those blossoms, the caw of the crow. The failure is wonderful indeed. But what about the tragic, painful, and terrible things that happen? Are they too wonderful indeed? Here is where it gets sticky. To fall into a concept about it, to generalize, won't hold up. Job is only fully answered by the voice out of the whirlwind. The consolation of philosophy, any concept deconstructs in the end. Only the direct experience is going to do. The voice in the whirlwind. What is this failure? It is so wonderful indeed. It's hard not to fall into thinking of Zen practice realization in terms of winning and losing, attaining and failing. It's very hard not to think of success and failure in our practice. When we're passed on a koan, we may think, bravo, success, and just feel great. When stuck on a koan or wrung out of the doksan room, we can feel like failures. Is any of it relevant? Is enlightenment our greatest success or greatest failure? Bob Dylan says there's no success like failure, and failures no success at all. That's love minus zero, no limit. Roshi Kapil used to ask at workshops, if you have an alcohol problem, who might help you more, a therapist or a reformed alcoholic? Then he would answer saying, both. They both can help, each in their own way. Contemporary Zen teachers looking at this koan of Manjusri, Momyo, and the young woman say, think of flying a modern jet plane. 100,000 Manjusris probably couldn't start and fly it, but an ordinary jet pilot can do it easily. Manjusri, the great wisdom bodhisattva, and Momyo, the Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom, like the delusive wisdom Bodhisattva and the young woman, also form a pair. Manjusri can't do anything without Momyo, and Momyo has no essential wisdom without Manjusri. What is the difference between their two kinds of wisdom? And as a final challenge to our hodgepodge of a comedy, whose wisdom is the greater, Manjusri's or Momyo's? Whose wisdom is the greater? That of the Bodhisattva of great prajna wisdom, or the Bodhisattva, the beginner Bodhisattva of delusive wisdom? What do you say? Now, though this may be off topic, here's a little story for you. Back in the 60s, Dane and Henry Roshi had an old VW bus. One night as he was driving along a lonely rural road, the bus broke down. Cursing and grumbling, he started walking toward the lights of a farmhouse, twinkling a mile or so ahead. As he walked along the empty road, the odors of trees and plants, of field and forest, came to him on soft night breezes. The Milky Way rippled and shone overhead. It became one of the most beautiful walks and memorable nights of his life. Wonderful. Wonderful failure, indeed. Turning again to Bob Dylan, the erstwhile failed Iron Country Minnesotan, formerly known as Robert Zimmerman. Right now, I can't read so good. Don't send me no more letters now. Not unless you mail them from Desolation Row. Indeed. Indeed. We'll stop here. and recite our great vows for all.